we took him to a golf course, and I lashed out.
Who shot him?
I'm responsible. And stabbed him. And we threw him in the woods. The state of Texas at the time, even though I was certified as an adult, I had just turned 17, and they sought the death penalty against me. I had a lot of pride. I mean, that's the one thing in prison is that, you know, the more violent you are, the more respect you get. He says, "Do you believe in God?" I believe in God? And I went, what does God have to do with this?
This is the prosecutor.
Yes. Wow. I had no respect for God. I didn't know him, didn't care to know him.
Yeah.
But when he asked me that question, I don't know what made me say yes.
All right, so welcome to the Maybe God studio, Arthur and Sabrina Medina. I'm so glad y'all are here. Thank you for making the trip
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
across town. So you live on the other side of Houston. I'm kind of the other side, the far side from here at least, about 30 minutes away.
Northwest side.
Northwest side, and so that can take anywhere from 20 to
An hour,
an
depending on
hour,
traffic.
depending. That's just Houston, but I'm so glad y'all are here. So
Yes.
thanks for
Appreciate
joining us. Been wanting to tell this story for quite some time, so it's a real honor. I mean, I think this is a story people need to hear. So Sabrina, we'll get to you in just a minute and your side of this story, but let's start with you, Arthur, and just tell us a little bit about where you grew up and the circumstances of your childhood.
I grew up on the east end side of town, known as Second Ward. And as I was growing up, we had a small Catholic family. There was 9 of us, six brothers, 3 sisters, and then my mom and dad. And then things changed for me around the 4th or 5th grade. While I was in school, a lady came up and just asked, did I know who she was? I said, "No, ma'am, I don't know who you are." And she goes, "I'm your mother." And I'm like, she's got the wrong kid. I told her, you have the wrong kid. My mom's at home. And that's when my life really got turned upside down.
All right.
Come to find out that she was my mother, and that one of my brothers was actually my father. So
the person you thought was your brother was actually your father.
Yes. And it just threw me for a loop. I just couldn't. I wasn't mature enough to process all this.
Yeah.
But what I did process and what I did think and feel at the time was that I wasn't loved. That I was not good, to the point that my own parents didn't want me.
Yeah.
And that I ended up in this household, and I latched on to being lied to, because to me, it was not protecting me. I was being lied to.
Yeah, the people closest to you had deceived you.
Yes.
At least that's how you processed it initially. And
Yes.
it was hard to see anything beyond that. It just must have felt awful to have the floor fall beneath you at, in 4th or 5th grade. How old are you at 4th or 5th grade?
At 10?
Like 10, that's a lot for a 10-year-old to process. How did your your mother find you, and where did that conversation go down?
She came to the school, and, that created a big uproar. And, when I got home to who I thought was my mother and my father, it was like, I was telling them, I told her she's got the wrong kid. And they're like, "I'm your mother, and I'm the one who," and then it just got to the point where they were no longer able to keep that up no more, because she was attempting to get visitation rights with me. And she did.
That was her reason for approaching you?
Yes.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of conflict there between the families.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was not accounted for was that she was 15 years old when she was pregnant with me.
Mm.
And but again, this is years later. I mean, years later that all this comes out, and you figure out, there's this side, the other side, and then there's the truth, as they say.
Yeah. You mean it was years and years later when you came to terms with the layers of things that were happening there?
Yes, understanding how one family was hating the other.
Yeah.
And in the end, it was, realizing that she was a kid herself.
Yeah.
In the 60s, that was still taboo. You just didn't do that.
How much older than you was this guy you thought was your brother turned out to be your biological father?
How much older?
Than you, yeah.
I would say he was 18.
Okay. So he was
When he
18
had
and your mom
me.
was 15.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it turned 16, and and then I didn't even know it, but they ended up getting married.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, that obviously didn't last long, but
Yeah. Okay. So who was it that actually raised you? Was it your grandparents?
My father's parents.
Father's parents. Okay.
Yes.
I'm putting it together now. I see how
Yeah.
that deception worked for a while until it didn't. I mean, it kind of makes sense. But man, what a story. I mean, what a way to start.
Yeah, it was very, sometimes even now as an adult, it's hard to process, who's who,
Yeah.
Like,
Sure. Now, why do you attribute that moment to sort of the moment everything changed? What was it about that sort of broke you? And
there was no trust.
Yeah.
I mean, we raise our kids and tell them, be honest with me. And I felt that was not done with me,
Yeah.
And at that point, I felt it was a world against me.
Sure.
And the prevailing sentiment was, you know what? I mean, my parents didn't even want me.
Sure. And your grandparents lied to you, and everybody's lying to you, and so why does anything really matter? Yeah.
Who can I trust?
Sure.
So I built a wall around myself, me against the world.
And what did the rest of your childhood look like? How did things change?
I escaped through sports, because at sports, you're always at practice, you're at a game, you're not home, often.
Right.
And that was my escape,
Yeah.
So I played all the sports, there was to play.
When did you start getting in trouble?
I started getting in trouble right around the age of 14, maybe even 13. The rebellious teenage stuff was just compounded by all these, misbeliefs that I was having about life, about people, that women or girls can never be trusted, and just that was me having, again, these misbeliefs that just dominated my life to the point that I just didn't want anyone close to me.
Yeah. And for most of those years, did you stay with your grandparents, or were you going back and forth from grandparents to your mom?
No, she was only allowed to take me, I think, like once a month. And then eventually, because of her circumstances, she just wasn't able to do it because, I mean, they made it hard for her.
Sure.
They insisted to blame her, and in reality, never my child.
Mm-hmm.
How parents take on this attitude, not my child, and it was you, and I think that took place,
Yeah. So, at what age did things start to get really bad? Like the trouble you getting into started being less just, mischief and more criminal?
By the age of 15, because at 15 I knew everything. So, I mean, why do I need to stay home?
Yeah.
Why do I even need to be under this roof?
Did you run away?
I'm a man.
Yeah.
So I know everything. At 15, what can you tell me? So I left.
Right.
And I don't call it running away. I just left. I didn't want to be with anyone anymore. I felt that, they weren't my family anyway.
Yeah.
And then the family that I wanted to be with, they didn't want me. They didn't want to have nothing to do with me. So it seemed.
Sure.
And so that's what enticed me to the streets. And it's amazing how you'll find other people that will welcome you, but for the wrong reasons, and that's how I ended up getting into criminal stuff.
Who were the people that welcomed you? Who are you talking about specifically?
So there were a couple of guys, James and Pete. They said, hey, well, that was the other thing. I didn't have money, so I had to figure out how to make money.
Right.
So they showed me how to make money, which is first selling cocaine, because then in the 80s, that was the new prevalent drug at the time. And then literally stealing cars and taking them to Mexico, which is where I was really making money.
You would steal cars in Houston and drive them to Mexico?
And drive them to Mexico. And of all people, for the federal government.
Which federal government? Sorry, I have to ask.
You have different federales in Mexico. So
Yeah.
I was taking them to one.
Okay.
And all I did was just drive the vehicle to a certain spot, leave it there, and come back.
Yeah.
And every now and then I would bring one back.
Yeah.
And I became one of their favorites because I wasn't like Pete and the other guys. They just didn't have, their appearance was like they were up to no good.
Right.
I had more clean cut. They did drugs as opposed to I didn't.
Sure.
That was the one thing that I think the Lord protected me from, was not doing drugs, not drinking. It's just not me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was entrusted to be in the apartment where all the drugs were stored because they knew I didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So what kind of cars would you steal? Were there certain kind that they liked, and would it be?
They were Grand Marquis.
Oh yeah, I forgot it was the 80s.
Grand Marquis,
Yeah.
Corvettes,
Right.
Crown Victorias.
Would you carjack them, or would you hotwire, or how does it work back then?
It would be literally someone could walk into a store in 15 seconds. We can have that car out.
Wow.
Just like that.
You just drive it straight to Mexico.
Yeah,
or
with
as soon as you
a
can.
dent pulley. Yeah, we just pull it out, store it somewhere until they were ready to us to take it.
Okay, got it. Wow. How long did that go on?
That went on for about a year. I was 16 when I started all that stuff, and then I just turned 17, and at that point, that's when things moved to a different level because I learned that my then girlfriend was pregnant with my daughter. And I told myself, I'm not going to be like my father, and I'm not going to be like my mother. I'm going to be there for my kid,
Yeah.
And so I wanted to walk away from it, understanding
From what?
from what I was doing, because I knew that was a path that was going to either get me killed or, sent to prison, of course.
Yeah.
And when I tried to walk away, I didn't have the maturity enough to know, hey, go to this church and ask them for help. You need guidance. You need someone to help you be a man.
Right.
Essentially. I went to certain people and they said, no, we can't allow you to stay here with us, and so I felt I had no other choice, again, my immaturity.
Yeah.
I don't want to blame anyone or it's my lack of maturity of not being able to process and being responsible.
Yeah.
And so I told myself, you know what? I'm going to make one last trip because if I carjack someone that has a Porsche, I can get $10,000. That's what the guy said he'd give me, because I had negotiated a deal with one of the guys in Mexico.
Yeah.
He says, all you got to do is bring it all the way down here to Monterrey, Mexico, drop it off, and I'll give you either $10,000 cash or $10,000 in cocaine.
So he specifically, it's like placing a special order. He wanted a Porsche.
Yeah, so that night we went out looking for this vehicle, and we understood that it was going to have to be a carjacking, because you can't steal that vehicle because the parts to replace are exotic cars. You know, you just don't get those at a car shop.
Yeah.
And it was during that process that a man was killed. It wasn't in a Porsche. He was not in a Porsche. He was in a different vehicle that we were going to use.
Oh.
And I'm responsible for a man losing his life.
Okay, let's talk about that, because as much as you're comfortable, but this is here in Houston?
It happened here in Houston.
Was it at night?
It was at nighttime.
And you're looking for a Porsche, but you find this other car first. You were going to use that car for something else, but what happened? You stole the car, and what happened to the guy?
We ended up putting him in the trunk of the car, and while we're driving around, I was, you know, he's alive. He's still in the trunk of the car. I don't know who he is. We don't know who he is. It's just a random person we just ran up against.
Yeah.
And we were not going to kill him. You know, that was not what we were going. We were just going to carjack somebody and go.
Mm-hmm.
And I just lost it. I don't know. It just seemed like everything at one time just hit me, you know. And then he made me mad because he put his fingers to the trunk of the car.
As you're driving it?
As we're driving it, yes. And I just got so angry.
So because you thought he was going to get you caught,
Yes.
I'm guessing. Because if he gets his fingers out, people might see him.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
And so you lost it.
And I lost it. We took him to a golf course, and I lashed out. And honestly, when I was in the back seat of the car after we had shot him.
Who shot him?
I'm responsible. Yeah. And stabbed him. And we threw him in the woods, in the wooded area. And as I sat in the back seat, the craziest thought at that point, it was like, I'm just going crazy, because I'm thinking to myself, I need to kill these guys.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't do it, of course.
Why do you think you thought that?
I don't know. I just, at the time, I just was, something snapped inside of my head.
Yeah.
I just snapped, and I was just in a rage. It just seemed that I was just so mad for so many different things at one time, and I ended up taking it out on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped myself from taking it out on them, and we ended up going into an apartment. We hung out there, and then in their minds, they said, hey, let's go hit another jackpot. We'll actually go finish getting this Porsche.
Right.
And so we left. While we're going, the police tried to pull us over. I mean, it's only obvious, you know, we think we're adults. But any sane person looking in this vehicle can look at everyone's face in there and know, you don't have no business out here at 3 o'clock in the morning driving a vehicle that's brand new. And they tried to pull us over. We ended up going on a high-speed chase and crashed. And that's how we basically got caught.
So they ran the plates of the car. They, I guess, found the guy?
They ended up finding him the next day.
Okay.
And then because at that time they had only caught us for auto theft,
Yeah.
and we were just in jail for auto theft at the time. I guess the police had made the call.
Sure.
We need to hold these guys. There's something else here.
Sure.
Because we had weapons and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah, you run the plates on a stolen car. You go to the residence and ask people where the owner of the car is, and he's not there. So clearly there's
yes,
a manhunt for him, and they find the body. And then you
Yes.
have more charges coming your way.
yes, and that's when I was charged with capital murder.
Just you?
Yes, I was charged with capital murder. The other two were charged with lesser included offenses. One for kidnapping and the other for robbery.
What were you thinking at the time? How did that hit you?
My life was over. The state of Texas at the time, even though I was certified as an adult, had just turned 17, and they sought the death penalty against me.
Really?
And I felt my life was over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, my life was over, because if I didn't get a life sentence or the death penalty, I was going to get a life sentence.
Sure.
So either way, my life's over.
What sounded worse to you at the time? Do you remember?
At the time, I didn't care. I mean, obviously, life is more the best choice. But is it really? I mean, you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
And
how did you tell your girlfriend, the mother of your child, on the way?
well, she knew. I mean, I had made a phone call, and so it triggered a chain of events that you don't even think about.
Yeah.
You're not. I don't know if you can actually think about consequences. When you're in that state, when
Mm-hmm.
you're, when you lack maturity, when you lack being responsible, when you lack all these different things.
Right.
And I ended up, I told myself then, I ended up being worse than my father and my mother. And was not going to be able to be there for my kid. And,
So you were 17. Your baby girl had not been born yet,
no,
and you're being charged as an adult, which,
yes,
because of the nature of the crime, I guess.
yes, because it was a capital murder offense.
Yeah. Did you have a public defender? Did you have a lawyer of your own, or how did that?
I mean, I was poor.
Poor.
So we
Took
we
what
got
they gave you.
we had a state appointed attorney.
Yeah.
And the irony of it is that he actually made worldwide news because he was the sleeping attorney.
Oh boy, that's never good.
He was sleeping during trials, and then when I told people that, no one believed me at the time. He's just trying to get his way out of trouble. He's just trying, and it came out he was a sleeping attorney.
Dude. That's wild. That's probably a topic for another podcast, but I want to know what happened to all them cases. Now, I want to know if they went back, and anyway, we'll ask that another time, but wow, you don't want your defense attorney snoring at the trial. That's
And
bad
he was
news.
intentionally placed on death penalty cases
Wow, really?
to secure convictions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened in
Not
your...
trying to
No, I hear
step
you.
on
I
no
hear
one's
you.
toes or anything like that, but the fact of the matter is,
Wow. So what happened in your case, in your trial? How'd that go down?
eventually it came to a point where my attorney convinced me, why go, you're going to get the death penalty. He says, you're going to get the death penalty. And why do that? Go ahead and accept a life sentence.
So they offered you a plea deal. with
Yeah.
no trial except a life sentence.
Yeah, we had already started interviewing jurors,
Sure.
and in a capital case, they're interviewed one by one.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why? Because you have to weed out those that,
Sure.
the state has to ask them, would you have an issue giving a 17-year-old, the death penalty?
Mm-hmm.
And we had already started picking jurors, and it just came to be that they said, you know what, go ahead and accept it. They'll drop the charge from capital murder to murder, first degree murder, and you
Yeah.
can start your sentence.
Is that what you did?
That's what I did.
So you were sentenced to life in prison.
Yes, sir. An aggravated life sentence.
And your first sentence there was with the possibility of parole?
I would be eligible in 20 years.
Okay.
At the time, that the law at the time was that in 20 years I would be eligible, but it didn't mean I would ever get out, though.
Yeah. Where were you sentenced to serve, or where were you sent?
Because of my age, I was sent to Ferguson Unit, which is at that time, and probably still is, because I went there not too long ago, the worst unit you can possibly go to, because it's considered the Gladiator farm.
Ooh, that doesn't sound good.
No, it wasn't. It was not.
So violence is what it's known for.
Extremely violent.
Why would they send the kids there? You said they send the young ones there. Why?
That was the unit designed to have people that were from certified age to around the age of 25. Very, very few people were older than that age there. Most were doing my type of sentence. Life sentence is 75 years, 99 years.
Yeah.
The vast majority were there serving that type of
Yeah.
sentence.
So, what was it like to walk in that place for the first time? I mean, what?
I mean, I was scared, but I had already known from day one what to expect, because one of the guys that was arrested with me had just gotten out from there.
Okay.
And he basically told me, look, when you get there, don't wear your tennis shoes, put them on your shoulder, because that's the one thing that happens when people come in that are new. They look at their tennis shoes, and then when you get on the block, they're going to fight you and take those tennis shoes from you. That's how they do it there.
Really?
And he says, put them on your shoulder and dare somebody to take them from you. And so I mean.
Oh, that's not how I was. I thought, this is my interpretation. As an outsider, I would have been like, oh, so you can just give them away more easily. That's what I thought. No, you're like, it's an alpha dog thing. You're like, fight me for them.
Yes,
If you want 'em.
and you're gonna keep fighting until they get tired. And then at that point, once you establish that you're not going to be a pushover and you're not going to be afraid to fight for yourself, then you pretty much get left alone for the most part.
Yeah.
But you always have these predators there.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Is there an urgency or pressure to align with any group when you get inside a unit like that?
Not really. I mean, for us as Hispanics, we're naturally a clannish people. So for us as Hispanics, we just, stuck together.
Yeah.
And as long as you stood your ground, you were accepted, and you really didn't have to worry about nothing. Again, as long as you represented yourself properly.
Right.
But if you didn't, then you were outcast per se, and then that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you obviously had an element of fearlessness to you relative to the average guy. But did you know how to fight? Did you know how to defend yourself when you went in, or did you learn on the job?
Well, that was a benefit of having older brothers and older sisters growing up,
Yeah.
They always used me as a punching bag, so I learned how to defend myself.
Right.
And so I wasn't necessarily the greatest fighter in the world, but I was going to defend myself. I wasn't going to back down. I told myself, I am not going to be a victim.
Mm.
And then when I was challenged, I mean, really challenged, I had a known predator that even the guards are scared of come to me and say that he was going to make me his girl.
Mm.
No,
He didn't say girl, did he?
no, he didn't say it that politely.
I feel like you're translating for a church audience.
Yeah, he did not say girl.
Wow.
He was very blunt, and he was known to be a predator. You know, that's what he did.
And everybody was afraid of him.
Everybody was afraid of him, and if you fight him, just know he's going to hurt you.
What'd you do when he said that to you?
I was going to fight him, and then before even a punch was thrown, people got involved because guards were coming, and that gave me the time to go get a weapon, because in my mind and the way the homeboys, helped me understand, says, look, you got a life sentence. Why are you going to fight him? Why don't you just kill him? Because what are they going to do? Lock you up? I already had a life sentence.
Yeah.
They could not give me any more time.
Wow.
Technically, they could not give me more
Sure.
time.
What kind of weapon did you have?
I got a hold of a homemade knife, which was a steel rod. And I went up to him and I told him, I tried to, because at that time, after I had gone through my initial, the initiation of things, I had settled into a routine. I had started going to school, and I just got my GED, and I had just signed up to go to college. So I said, you know what, might as well, right?
What else am I going to do?
Yeah, I can't sit here and play dominoes all day.
Yeah.
And that was something because I had seen other people in my family, my brother, really my uncle, but my brother Robert, who stood with me during these tough times. He would encourage me, man, go to school, don't get, stay away from trouble, don't get in trouble, And so that's what I did. And so I'm at work, and this guy just comes up to me, and he literally gave me an ultimatum: fight or be screwed by him. Yeah, but he didn't put it in those terms.
I'm starting to get it.
Yeah, he did not put it in those.
F word?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously we weren't going to do the second. And
Wait. This is not the same guy. This is a different guy?
no, this is the
Same guy?
predator.
Okay.
This is when he came up to me, and
Got
so
it.
I said, okay. And then when we didn't get the fight, it gave me the chance to go get my knife.
Okay.
And then I stopped him going to work the very next day. And I said, okay, you disrespected me yesterday, and if you could just apologize to me, I'm willing to let this go, right?
Yeah.
And he did not give me the answer I wanted. He insisted, he got in my face and he says, oh, you're a new boot. That's what you call
Right.
guys that are new in the prison.
Sure.
You new boot. You better, and he just started. And that's when I called it Excalibur. The knife that I had, I called it Excalibur, and I pulled that out and I started stabbing him.
How many times you stabbed him?
It was about 5 to 7 times I stabbed him, and then I stopped because he was with 2 guys, and I was going to get them too. But they ran, and then when I turned around, he started running, and I chased them all through the hallway, and finally it got to where I got surrounded, and they locked me up behind that, and they charged me. That was the first of different charges I got while in prison.
Did he make it, or?
He survived.
Okay.
And
So what happened? What changed for you inside in the prison, I mean, after that.
From that point, I mean, I was trying to do good,
Yeah.
and it just seemed, it was so hard to go on this path, to do good.
Yeah.
It just seemed like it. And probably it didn't help that I was not hanging around the most influential, positive people in the world, and
Well, you just took out the big kahuna, right?
and it's at that point, that's when things really changed for me, because now they're looking at me as, hey, man, that's art right there.
Yeah.
My nickname in there was Grasshopper.
Okay.
Man, that's Grasshopper right there.
Why grasshopper?
When the first day I got there, I was squatted against the wall because I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. And they said that when the guy came at me, the way I jumped up from my squatting position, I looked like a grasshopper.
Yeah.
And, started fighting them. Nickname stuck.
Yeah, it's a pretty that's a pretty nonviolent nickname for a man who had your reputation. It's like a sneaky grasshopper, one of them assassin grasshoppers.
But yeah, so I mean, at that point that was the crazy thing. It was turned into a racial issue, and it had nothing to do with that. And I tried.
Oh, because the guy was a different race from you?
He was black.
Got it.
And so the administrator, I told him, what was I supposed to do?
Yeah.
If I go to the searcher's desk, okay, which is the main desk in the hallway, and I ask for help, what are you going to do?
Right.
The first thing that's going to happen, I'm going to get labeled as a snitch. And I can't, I'm just starting my life sentence. And then, or if I catch the right guard there at that desk, he's going to tell me this, because I saw him say it to others. Well, you better learn how to fight.
Man, it's kill or be killed almost.
And that was it.
So from that point on, so you took that guy out. He survived, but he never forgot you, I bet, and others the same. How many other altercations did you have? How many bodies did you leave in your wake over the next several years in prison?
I was charged with 5 different additional charges while incarcerated, and I ended up getting 119 years total.
Jeez. Charges ranging from, I mean, is this just like assault and battery? What are the charges did you kill anybody in prison?
I did not kill anyone myself. But when you get involved with these gangs, you have an influence on things that happen.
Okay.
And so there were
Got it.
many things that happened that, I mean...
I feel like you have to be real careful when you talk. Do you feel that way?
Well, there is no statute of limitation for certain crimes, and I can't...
We'll move on. I get it. All right. As much as I can possibly get it, I get it. I've seen enough TV shows to know when to stop asking a man about something. So there was this guy who prosecuted one of your cases, called you one of the most feared inmates in the state of Texas. Did you know that? That's what they said about you?
Yes, I knew that they had said that about me.
How did it feel at the time?
When I was in that state of mind, how I was at that time, I had a lot of pride. I mean, that's the one thing in prison is that, the more violent you are, the more respect you get.
Yeah.
And, I didn't take a backseat to anyone, and I had come to a point where I said, you know what, I'm not going to dance to no one else's tune. I'm going to dance to my tune.
Sure.
And then, just by doing these stupid things, which, by the way, I think it's important to share this with you,
Sure.
and that is, I'm not proud of none of this stuff.
Well, that's my next question is how you feel about it now, looking back.
I am not proud of this stuff. I look back at this stuff, and I just, I'm appalled. I kind of like, it's not possible. It is not possible. And I tell her all the time, I don't know. I know now why, or what protected me, because I'm not the greatest fighter.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'm not the most imposing figure. I'm not as big as I am now. I was a beanpole.
Yeah.
And different situations that I'd been in, riots, attempts on my life, got bombed, never got touched. And in my mind, in my sick mind at that time, I thought I was that bad,
Yeah.
you know? But I'm not proud of none of that stuff. And I wish that I could undo it. I wish I could go back to when I was in high school and decided to stop going to school.
Yeah.
I wish I could go to that point in time and say, no, I need to work through this.
Right.
Let me fight through this. And I don't know what the end result would have been at that point. You know, we would probably not be sitting here today, you know. But I did go down this path, and I'm here. And if there's anything, it's showing the power of God and what God can do when we take him at his word.
Yeah.
And
Amen. Amen. I want to get to that and talk about how you started finding God and who led you down that road. And
well, more specifically, having faith in Jesus Christ, because we can tend to talk about God. Certain people say God, okay, God. Well, you know what? You can make yourself God, you know.
Sure.
And so I'm specifically referring to Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior.
Yeah, I hear you. And it is a miracle that you're here telling this story with this testimony. And it's never ceases to amaze me what God can change, the troubles that he can change into a testimony. It is, this might be, though, the most dramatic story I've ever heard of darkness to light. I mean, literal darkness, because you were in solitary for how much of that time? How many years total are we talking about?
I ended up serving over 27 years, and 15 and a half were in solitary confinement.
Gosh.
But it was not solitary confinement for me for all those years, because as I look back, I saw those times, because that's the day that I got the visit from the man you describe in me as, what did he quote?
The most feared inmate in Texas.
So he came to visit me, and I thought it was for another crime that I had committed.
Right.
And one of the ones I don't discuss.
Yeah, one of those.
You know. And so he comes and he said he just dropped it on me. You know, he did, during the conversation, he says, I just got to ask you a personal question. And, you know, I'm like, okay. You know, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what angle is he coming at me, you know?
Plead the fifth here.
Yeah. He says, do you believe in God? I believe in God. And I went, what does God have to do with this?
This is the prosecutor.
Yes. Wow. What does God have to do with this? I mean, God was a name I used when I cussed.
Yeah. Right.
But, I mean, I didn't have in prison, when you're in the Bible and all that, it's actually viewed as weakness.
Yeah.
So naturally, that was way on the other
Sure.
side of the spectrum for me.
Yeah.
I had no respect for God. I didn't know him, didn't care to know him.
Yeah.
But when he asked me that question, I don't know what made me say yes.
Yes, I believe in God.
Yes, I believe in God. I didn't know anything about him. Nothing. And his next question is what changed trajectory of my life. I didn't show it then because I call it my gorilla face. And he said, well, if you believe in God, why don't you get to know him?
Wow.
And that changed the trajectory of my life, because here I just said to this man, you know, I believe in God, but I don't know nothing about him. And that was a moment where there was a paradigm shift, and that was my first encounter with God.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, when you have an encounter with God, you don't come away the same.
Right.
And little did he know of that changing the trajectory of my life, because I was about to kill somebody else during that time. And I needed to know who God was. At that point in time, I became a truth seeker. Because remember, I've got all these issues. I've got trust issues, abandonment issues, rejection issues. Who's telling the truth?
Yeah.
So I studied Islam. I studied Jehovah's Witness. I studied Mormons. I was in a 6x9 cell for years, over decades of time. I had nothing else to do.
Right.
And that's what I did. Every opportunity I got books. And I hate reading. But there was nothing else to do, because there's no TV.
Yeah.
There's no AC. There's no all these different distractions and comforts.
No AC. I'm sorry, that got me. In Texas?
And
Really?
That's right, yeah.
Wow.
You got to create a dam on your cell, fill it up with water, and lay in it just to stay cool.
Just to cool off.
Yes.
So you'd get books, like, would you order them, or would you go to the library, or you just get...
So there were organizations that gave you free books. You sent them your request, and then they would send you the books you asked for. And I always got those books because no one ever really asked for those books, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, and that started me on my journey. And it's in studying the Word of God, the Bible, that it jumped out at me.
The Bible did?
The Bible jumped out at me, and I noticed the difference also was all these other religions were focused on me doing things to get to God, whereas in Christianity, I didn't have to do anything. It's already been done by our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Right. Wow, that's remarkable. And I think what a difference it would have been to see that difference between Christianity and other religions. As a person who sat where you sat, somebody who's done some of the most awful things imaginable, you know, and been convicted and sit in solitary and all this, the news that what you've done in this life will condemn or save you could not have been good news to you, or to any of us really, if we're honest, but especially to you where you sat. And the news of grace must have been the best possible news, like the news of God coming to us regardless of our behavior.
You know, I love the story where Jesus is on the cross and there's two others with him. We forget about the other two that were there. One of them made his decision and denied him and just accosted the Lord.
Right.
But the other one he told him, today you will be with me in paradise.
Yeah.
So I know that challenges the theology of many people.
Yeah.
Because he didn't get baptized.
Pray the sinner's
He
prayer.
didn't pray the sinner's prayer.
Join a church.
You know, he wasn't baptized. It looked like a prune. That's how I say. He didn't go to Bible studies.
Yeah.
None of that. So for me, I connect to that in this way, and that he could have said, you know what? I know your heart. I know you're coming at me right. Obviously, for him to say, today you'll be with me in paradise, okay? He didn't exonerate him. Instead, he was held accountable for his actions, right? God had even more mercy and grace in my life, because while I was locked up in a prison in an impossible situation, God, I say, took me off the cross and says, here, you're going to go and tell people about me. And that's why I'm here today.
Wow.
So that's how I see that.
Yeah.
There was still the accountability, right? But now I get to walk in the newness of life and share the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news of what he can do, because we serve an amazing God.
Amen. Okay, guys, this seems like the perfect time to take a quick break and tell you about an organization that is near and dear to my heart. Jubilee Prison Ministries is changing lives every day throughout the state of Texas. I've seen it myself firsthand, how Jubilee is changing inmates' lives, first and foremost by hosting Jubilee weekends, where inmates enjoy great food, they make new friends with folks on the outside, and most importantly, they hear the hopeful message of Jesus that in many cases changes their lives forever. But inmates aren't the only people who have their whole trajectory shifted and altered by Jesus through Jubilee. I've seen personally God moving powerfully in the lives of men and women who serve through Jubilee and their weekends inside of Texas prisons. I personally know guys, for example, who were pretty good guys, pretty good men before they chose to step up and serve through Jubilee, but after their first weekend volunteering in a prison, I've witnessed those same guys be transformed by God into great men, men with fire in their eyes and passion to change the world. And the best part is that these guys don't just catch fire for a time and then, that fire goes out and they go back to being who they were before. These guys are forever transformed because Jubilee's approach is so relational that the guys find the folks who are serving alongside of them are their friends on mission together for a lifetime. It's truly amazing to see. But Jubilee isn't just for men, by the way. They're also looking for women to step up and serve in women's prison units throughout the state, or to provide outside support for all the Jubilee weekends and men's and women's units alike. If you're ready to serve and you're willing to make a difference in the lives of incarcerated men and women throughout the state of Texas, and maybe you need to make a change in your own life as well, you're ready for something more, I hope you'll visit jubileeprisonministries.org for more information about how to volunteer. If you're not ready to serve in person in a prison yet, please consider making a donation through their website. Again, that's jubileeprisonministry.org. You will make a difference just by making a donation. Jubilee is an ecumenical nonprofit organization, and all donations are tax deductible. Thanks for listening, and now let's get back to today's episode. Was there a time, a defining moment when you accepted Christ and became a Christian?
I believed in him. I think it was around 2003 every day, when you stop and think about it, every day we have to make the decision when we get up in the morning. Are we going to follow him?
Yeah.
So that defining moment was maybe around 2003, more or less. I would say around that time, maybe even sooner than that, because, there were so many different people that out of nowhere were pouring, so, it's a process. It's always hard to see the butterfly and the worm crawling around through life, ain't it?
Yeah, that's right.
But it's a process. So, we can go back to when the prosecutor asked me that question, but maybe there were other people who were obedient to the Lord that had, maybe I didn't consciously really, because there were guys that were always come to the prison ministry.
Yep.
Hey, Jesus loves you, man, get out of my face.
Yeah.
But that was a seed. Even though I rejected them, did I really reject them? Because that's a seed that was planted, and others watered, and God gave the increase.
Wow. Now you're preaching. That's really good. That's solid. That's beautiful to remember everything that any believer's ever done to plant the gospel seed in us. Even if we rejected it, it was still grace for us from the Father. There's a phenomenon known as jailhouse religion, right? Where guys will fake it, I guess, or say they've got Jesus to get on somebody's good side and maybe get out a little early. Did you see that a lot?
Yeah, I see it all the time. I mean, I do prison ministry. You know, the alma mater is this. You know, when you graduate from A&M, you give back, right? You graduate from UT, you give back. Well, I graduated from the School of Hard Knocks, TDCJ.
Right.
And so we go back. I go back and I share with them. You know, some of them still know who I am from the past, and they're like, can't believe it, kind of thing. But I share with them, you know.
Yeah. Well,
there's nothing wrong with prison religion.
Right.
Just don't leave it behind when you get out.
Yeah. That's the reason I brought it up.
Yeah.
Because we do prison ministries here, and a lot of churches do, and I think a lot of times people get discouraged when they hear about jailhouse religion or jailhouse Christianity because they think, well, these guys are just pulling our legs. They just want to get a leg up on the process. And the thinking is, look, even if that's the case, plant the seed. Plant the seed because you never know what the Lord will do with it.
Not the guys that I know and I hung out with, because once the decision was made and I became a soldier for Christ, God put other soldiers for Christ along around me, and we held each other accountable. Every single one of us that were in that group. Michael Bingham is a youth pastor in Arlington. He started a church in Czechoslovakia, started a school in Czechoslovakia, has traveled the world preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's one. Albert Yancey, just got off the phone with him, started his own business. He's got his own ministry called the FBI. Freedom Beyond Incarceration.
That's a great acronym.
Yeah, FBI. I said the whole time he just wanted to be an officer of some type, right? But I mean, these are just some of the guys that we're out here, and we're trying to set the world on fire for Jesus.
Yeah. What changed on the inside of, you still had time to serve, and most people watching or listening right now are like, wait, how did you even end up here, and why are you not still locked up? But we'll get to that in a minute. But what changed on the inside, and once you accepted Jesus and became an outspoken believer, like you said earlier, like there's risk that comes with it, being that guy on the inside.
Well, what helped me was my past, because now people say, man, you know,
he's a real one, but
he's real, you know, but what if he is faking still? I don't want to mess with that guy. You know what I mean? And so basically it was just telling people and challenging people that were still active gang members. Hey man, you can't tell me this is worth dying for. You can't tell me that by killing me, that it's going to change anything. If anything, it's going to mean that you're going to die a martyr for nothing. Because there'd be times that active gang members, because now they had put a contract on my life. And so one of them was there, and you know, like everyone knows, you know. I said, oh man, something's about to go down, you know, and everyone wants to see something go down. And he told me, meet me in the gym. So I met him in the gym. And he goes, man, you know, you got a lot of testicles to be showing up here. And I said, not really, but what's going on? And, you know, I had a chance to minister to him and just tell him, you can't tell me that going down this life right here is going to lead you to everything that you want. Going down this way, you have a chance. You know, I said, I don't know if I ever get out. Who knows? You might end up killing me, or you send someone to kill me. It is what it is. You know?
So I can only imagine then that your past and reputation played into your favor when you became a believer. Like God even used that. To give you credibility among those you were sharing the gospel with.
Yes.
which is another testament to how amazing God is. Like he can redeem anything and turn it around for a blessing, for his glory. Let's talk about the hearings. I mean, parole hearing number 1 comes up. Were you expecting to be released?
I never expected to be alive to see it.
Yeah. Because it was
Never.
so dangerous on the inside.
I never thought I would. One, I thought either the state was going to kill me.
What do you mean?
Because of the crimes that were committed while incarcerated. I thought the state would either kill me, that my own gang would kill me, the other gangs that I messed with would kill me.
Man.
I mean, I made a lot of enemies along the way, you know. But, I mean, I would tell people it wasn't personal, you know, and I asked for forgiveness.
Really?
Yes. And I said, I am, because there's one guy, and this was what helped me on forgiveness. So one guy was stabbed almost like, 50 times because of me. And he knows it was because of me.
Yeah.
And we ended up on the same, years later, we're on the same pod. And I was saved at that time, and I knew that I had to ask him for forgiveness. And I told him, that I was sorry. And he forgave me.
Did he? On the spot?
Yeah, and it proved it because there was a fire that happened, and they had to evacuate everybody, and we ended up in the same pen. And this is somebody that said, he had a history of his own, and he had said, if I ever get a chance, I'm going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And he had his chance, but instead we embraced.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, there's so many things that have happened along the way.
Of course. Do you know where he is today?
He's out. I know he's out, and you know.
Wow.
Of course, I don't seek him out because, you know, I don't know how he feels right now.
Sure,
You know,
or
and
how he's
things,
doing.
situations are different, but I know I had a chance to genuinely say that I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean that I'm very sorry for what I've done and how stupid I was.
Yeah. Powerful. I mean, to even go through the process of seeking forgiveness. You didn't have to do that, but in a way you did, right?
I had to, yes.
I get it.
mean, we're
Totally
called
get it.
the Ministry of Reconciliation.
So your first parole hearing was denied. Your first chance at parole was denied. They sent you back for 5 more years, right?
Yes, and I think that was when, okay, now remember, I was in disbelief of even seeing this parole. And I was like, you know, I was just starting to be on fire for the Lord and, you know, all this good stuff. And I had already started getting some good positive accomplishments under my belt, getting, you know, going to school, stuff like that. But that's when God taught me one of the hardest lessons we learn in faith, and that he wasn't concerned with my freedom. He wasn't concerned with me being happy. He was concerned with his will being performed in my life and developing my character for what he had for me down the road that I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I took that attitude of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego.
Right.
And that's what I tell them. Even, but two weeks ago, we were in our Bible study. And I tell people, we have to have this mentality of what they had, they told the king, my God will deliver me.
Mm-hmm.
But even if he don't, I will not bow down. And that's how we got to be
Yeah.
as Christians.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't call me to be a sissy or a coward. And he doesn't, in fact, I saw in the Bible, he don't like cowards.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got to step our game up as Christians.
Sure. It's just so different from what we're normally used to hearing from pulpits and from Christians, which is, of course, God wants me to be happy. God wants me to have the best life. And God wants me to be whatever, prosperous and out of prison for sure, and all these things. And you're saying God taught you something different and deeper, a truth that most people are never privy to. They're not ready for it, which is, it's not about your happiness. It's really not, from God's perspective. It's about your heart, and your heart can be with Him, whether you're in solitary or whether you're in, River Oaks in Houston or wherever we are today. It's like, that's just geography.
Yes.
Wow. So what happened at your next parole hearing?
So fast forward 5 years. At that time, God used me as an instrument of righteousness there in prison. And I mean, so many different things, great things happen. That's where I met my friends, and we're still friends out here.
Yeah.
And I came up for parole, and I go to my interview, and she said, Mr. Medina, from here to here, you're arguably the worst inmate in TDC, but from here to here, you're an outstanding inmate. What happened right here? And at that moment, most people will say, oh, well, I got a degree in computer science, and I got this, and I've got these accomplishments, and I have that. Because I did that in my last hearing.
Sure.
And that got me a 5-year set-off, right?
Let's try something different.
No, I just said, you know what? I believed in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior and repented for what I've done. And I ain't been the same since.
Wow.
And she said, I knew it.
Really?
I'm a Christian too.
Wow.
And so, I never really thought about that until maybe years later when I'm like, wow, how many people have told her that very same thing? Mm-hmm. I'm changed. I've done this. I've done that. And they didn't believe them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing.
Man.
And that's the favor of God.
So what ended up happening is?
7 days later, I got a unanimous decision to be released from prison. And I had to go through a program that was a faith-based program. It's an 18-month intense program that helps. It's with the Bible centered in it. It's a phenomenal prison unit that the governor at the time instituted here in Texas, and it's a phenomenal. That needed to be duplicated
everywhere.
All over.
Yeah. Wow. How long ago was that you were freed?
It's been going on 13 years.
Okay. So you went into prison at 17.
Yes, sir.
Spent how many years total?
27.
27 years total, and now you're going on 13 or so.
Yes, sir.
Freed. I'm not trying to do math and figure out how old you are.
I'm
just trying to figure out the trajectory of your life. You were in prison longer than you've been a free adult.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for telling us that whole story. And Sabrina, thank you for being so patient with us as we worked our way through it. I do want to kind of loop you into this conversation and get your insight. All right. So pull that mic a little closer to you. Or, either way. So tell us, Sabrina, about meeting Arthur. What were your first impressions?
We were going to Lakewood. His mom was in the choir, so we had to get there really early in the morning. And it just so happened I was at the grand entrance. We had just rotated and in our locations, and he was coming out the bookstore. I didn't know. because anyone that comes through the grand entrance, that's the big elevator or the escalators and the staircase, which is right there by the bookstore. You just tell them, welcome to Lakewood.
Sure.
Glad you're here, whatever God puts on your heart. So, and we direct them to, depending on the time of the service, we direct them to one side of the church or the other side, where they need people to go for camera and sing, all that
Right.
stuff, right? So he's there and he comes up and I tell him, welcome to Lakewood. And he's like, and he's not saying nothing. He just looks at me and I'm like, okay. And he tells me, have you been here this whole time? And I'm like, yeah. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And we, it's a job, so you can't just stand there and talk to people.
Sure.
You got to keep them going.
Yeah.
And so my leader tells me, Carmen tells me, hey, do you know him? I'm like, no. And she's like, can you move him aside? And I'm like, okay. So I told him that. And, before I know it, we're seeing each other more and more at church. And it's like, that church is so big, you really don't see people that often, And he asked me to take a picture of his mom. So I worked for T-Mobile at the time, and he gives me this little phone that slide up. And if you try to take a picture of that and blow it up, there's no pixelation, so you couldn't do nothing with it. And I just had the latest, HTC phone that came out, and he tells me, well, I want to blow it up for my mom and for Christmas. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So I'll just take the picture and send it to you, whatever. Didn't think nothing of it. And he ended up, I sent it to him, so he got my number. And his mom asked me, do you want a picture with him? And I'm like, no, I don't know him like that. Like, I don't care. And she kind of got offended, but I was like, I'm sorry. But we end up, he's like, well, sister, can I send you devotions? And I'm like, another one? Like, no. I'm like, sure, whatever. And I didn't think I was going to see him, but we ended up seeing each other, and because his mom was in the choir, like I said, and but God showed me that he was the one I was going to marry.
Really? How soon after?
Within 30 days after we met.
No way.
I knew, yeah.
Did you know?
Yes.
Really?
I knew the first moment I met her.
What? Really?
Yes.
Wow. Got a chill down my spine.
No,
This is
he did
real romance.
He did tell me I was not in love with him. I was not in love with him, and I told him I was not in love with him. But because God had already confirmed to me that he was the one I was going to marry, I said yes. And he said, you don't have to love me, you just have to honor me, and God will provide the rest.
Wow.
And
That's biblical.
It is, but did you know everything about his past when God told you all that?
I mean, my dad was at the time, he was a police officer.
Okay. So your dad had already run the background checks.
No, my
Just
dad
kidding.
didn't.
That's a dad joke.
My dad didn't know him at the time. We're grown up, and
Right.
he was living his life in College Station at the time. So
So did all of that about Arthur give you any pause or hesitation?
I told him to shut the front door. I didn't believe him that he could have been in prison. I mean, when I met him, he was wearing a suit with the blazer, and he had hair like Elvis, and he was too clean cut, like for a guy to be in prison. Like I didn't believe it, so I just was like, whatever.
Sure.
But as he shared with me, and I was like, okay, cool. I never met anyone that. I mean, I have family members that were in prison, but
Yeah. So you were able to get past any hesitations you might have had, if you had any at all. You guys are here together. Obviously, this worked out. You're married now. Mm-hmm. How many years?
12.
How many?
We've been married 12 years.
How long after you met did you get married?
10 months.
Brother, you work fast.
Well, no, I wanted to get married sooner, and he said, no, because we got to put our birthdays together and this date, and this is what it comes out to. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to wait forever.
Yeah.
So it was almost a year.
It was a year.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, Sabrina, I'll just ask, this is a sensitive question. Do you ever worry that your husband might snap again, or something, that old man might come back?
No, I prayed for a man that I would see God, and every day, and I see God in him every day.
Yeah. So the man he describes to you is a man you've never known.
No, never.
He was fully changed and redeemed.
Yes, I've only seen him raise his voice twice, and we've had family like try to put us in situations to get him back incarcerated because they're mad at me. But we just had to get him out the situation so that he wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I've never seen him in any shape or form get to the point where he is violent in any way.
What particular challenges do y'all face, given your past and your record, I guess, that remains? Like, what's harder about your lives because of your past experiences?
Well, in the beginning, it caused because we had family that my cousin wasn't doing very well with drugs, and we ended up taking in the kids for a little bit.
Yeah.
And because he was there, CPS they gave him back, and so we had that issue. We had for the first maybe year, it was hard because he couldn't find a job that was gainful employment.
Sure.
He kept making under minimum wage because they could.
Really? They had you where they wanted you, and they could use you accordingly. Yeah.
And, so I was working at T-Mobile, and I had the car. He didn't have a vehicle. He didn't really even know where things were in Houston because things had changed so much.
Sure.
So in the beginning, it was kind of tough, but God worked it out. I mean, I was going to school full-time, working full-time, a commission-based job, and still able to get him back and forth to. Then when he finally got a job, it was taking him to work too. And so I don't know how God did it, but God really made a way.
That's what he does.
Yeah.
So what does life look like today for y'all? What are you doing for work now?
Well, he ended up getting a job in the industry of HVAC, and then that's where we're end up now. We started our own company out of our garage.
You started your own company. Mm-hmm. How long has that been going on?
Going on 8 years.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good.
It's going great.
If somebody needs a furnace or air conditioner in Houston, how do they find you?
Well, we're in the ventilation part, the commercial.
Okay.
So more of a kitchen, industrial,
Awesome.
The
warehouses.
exhaust system.
Congratulations.
The Lord's definitely blessed us and made us a steward of this business. We don't own it. We're stewards of it.
Wow.
And we run it that way.
Yeah. I couldn't help but notice earlier when Sabrina was telling the story about Lakewood Church, meeting you there, your mom was there.
Yes.
So who was that? Was that your mom?
My real mother.
Mm-hmm. The one that went to school.
The Lord reconciled us
Really?
together.
How'd that happen?
Well, she, while I was incarcerated, I got a letter from an aunt, and I asked her, is there a way for her to get my mom's information? Because I needed to reach out to her.
Huh.
And I reached out to her and told her, Mom, I want you to know I forgive you. And I'm not here because of you. I'm here because of me.
Yeah.
Because I felt she also needed to know that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure she sat back thinking, had I never done this, he would not be there.
Yeah.
And I just told her, there's no excuse for my actions. I'm not going to offer any. I'll make no attempt to rationalize it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to take full responsibility.
Yeah.
And she also has to take full responsibility too.
Right.
And it was not easy. I mean, it was hard at first, she, because we've gotten into our comfort zones, and we kind of think that, we don't have a responsibility for
Yeah.
that.
Just
you
sweep
know.
things under the rug a little, and
It just, you know, it's just ignore it. But I didn't allow her to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I told her that, I mean, I still don't agree with everything that transpired.
yeah,
But if there's anyone to forgive anyone, it would be me forgiving her. And then I also asked her to forgive me for my situation at the time. And we went from there. We've worked on our relationship. I mean, we're
amazing.
great. I mean,
It's amazing the healing that God can bring.
yes.
Have you spoken to your daughter?
Yes, we actually we're in every day. We communicate.
Come on.
Yeah, every day. Yeah, we get the privilege of helping her raise our youngest granddaughter. I mean, we got to see her in her mom's womb. You know, my daughter's womb. We were there for her during those times. And so that's been a really big blessing for us to have input. One of the, I think for us, probably the best thing we've ever done in our life
Yeah.
was teaching our youngest granddaughter to say grace. That means more to me than anything else in this world.
So beautiful.
You know?
Gosh, that's
And
so
if
beautiful.
you forget to pray, she's like, Papa, we forgot to pray.
Yeah, intentionally, I won't say grace, and she'll right away, Papa, we got to say grace, Papa.
That's awesome.
You know?
She's holding the line now. That's great. Man, that's so good. Now, one of the reasons, among others, we wanted to talk to you is because of your, what I would consider a pretty unique perspective on the death penalty. We've been talking about the death penalty on our podcast channel for a long time now, and had different perspectives and views. Most of the views that we found, people that wanted to speak out against the death penalty just on the grounds of principle or morality or whatever. You have a little bit of a different take on that, and I just wondered if you could unpack that for us a little bit.
Yes, sir. I go back to, again, when Jesus was crucified and the two thieves. The Lord easily could have said to him, you know what, he's exonerated, let him go, and go on and go and tell people about how good God is.
Yeah.
He didn't do that. And I look at my personal situation, because I could have gotten the death penalty, and I deserved the death penalty. Because all the way up until I had that road to Damascus moment, like Paul, when Paul was on his horse, and the Lord knocked him off his high horse.
Right.
You know, Paul was killing Christians and thinking that he was right to do that. And we see what Paul has done, and how, with 13 books, 13 epistles are from Paul, the Apostle Paul. And in my situation, I believe that had I been sentenced to the death sentence, and I had not come to know the Lord as my personal Lord and Savior, then I would be going to hell. That's simple.
Yeah.
That's you know, we're either gonna go there, you know, to heaven, you know, voluntarily kneeling before Him, or we'll be going to hell. We'll be forced to kneel to acknowledge Him that He is Lord. But
so I hear you're saying that you feel like at that point in your life you deserved the death penalty. Had it been your sentence, you would have deserved it. Given your closeness to your own circumstance, that makes sense. I can see how you could get in that frame of mind. But that's a different thing a little bit. It can be a different thing than believing that that the death penalty on principle is an okay thing. Like, do you believe that are you saying the governments have the right to take life if the ones whose lives they're taking have also taken life? Is it an eye for an eye philosophy?
I don't necessarily think it's eye for an eye. It's case by case.
Yeah.
If the laws of the land, if the people have said we want the death penalty for our state, then don't commit a crime that's going to give you the death penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple, you know.
That is probably the strongest argument I've heard from Christians about supporting the death penalty in principle, which is there's nothing biblically explicit saying that it's wrong or it's bad or it's evil for governments to take life for life. Now, you can still believe, there's better ways to deal with criminals, and we've had people make the argument that we shouldn't believe in the death penalty because we want to give people every possible chance to know Jesus in this life, and to kill them is it's hard to evangelize a dead man, if impossible to evangelize a dead man. So I understand that argument, but I also do get the other side where, there's nothing explicitly in the Bible that says no government has the right to claim this as their rule of law. It sounds like that's kind of where you're coming from too, but you're mixing in the theology of it, because I hear you saying that God is God and we are not, and so he can do what he wants.
Yeah, and we take on this position of thinking we have a heaven to put people in and a hell to put people in. We don't.
Yeah.
Because as I understand it, we're going to get to heaven and kind of wonder, how did he get in here?
Have you ever heard the story about the thief on the cross? There's this pastor that tells an awesome story about the thief on the cross. And I think this is from a pastor named Alistair Begg. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's Alistair Begg. And he paints a picture of this thief dying that day and going to heaven and completely surprised to be there. It's like he knows he doesn't belong. And other people that knew him are like, what are you doing here, guy? Like, he's got prison tattoos, or he's got crucifixion scars, and he's got bearing all the marks of somebody who should be in hell by our human metrics. And everybody's questioning him, like, do you know the theology of the atonement, or can you state for me, the whatever theology, doctrine, whatever, and quote your favorite Bible verse, or quote this verse, John 3:16, quote it now. And he doesn't have any answers for anybody. And they go, then what are you doing here? And he said, the guy on the other cross said I could come.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all he needed.
Yeah.
Was for the guy on the middle cross to say you could come. And all the other stuff, his past, his sins, his crimes, didn't matter if he accepted that invitation.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful reminder for us all.
Yes.
And whether or not you've spent 25, 27 years in prison, we're all guilty. And in a way, I think being declared guilty by the courts and sent to prison is in its own way a little bit of a grace. Like, you're forced to reckon with your sin. Most of us who get off scot-free our whole lives aren't forced to reckon with our sin.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're all guilty. And the only way we can be saved is if the guy on the middle cross says we can come, and we say, all right, that's it.
Yep.
Well, I hate to say that we're out of time, but I just want to thank you both for sharing this story with us. Arthur, thank you for your courage and your convictions. And I pray that God continues to use you in powerful ways. And both of you, Sabrina, thank you for your witness and your obedience to the Lord, to say yes to God's wild idea that this is the man you're going to marry, and y'all are going to build something special together by his grace. And here you are. So I just pray you keep going.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.